All right. Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Michigan Observer Corps training. We ask that participants please mute themselves during the training to avoid any extraneous noises. If you have questions as we go through different sections, please put your questions in the chat. I'm going to be monitoring the chat, and there will be breaks throughout the presentation, and I will bring those questions forward to Lori so that we can get them addressed as we go through things. If there's time at the end, we will give people a chance to ask some further questions. We'll stop the slide presentation, and then people can unmute and ask questions they may have. The recording will be posted on the League of Women Voters of Michigan website within a few days, and I'll also send it out to the group as well. A couple more people to let in here. There we go. So now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Lori Kingsbury of the League of Women Voters of Grosse Pointe, who will be doing the training for us this afternoon. Lori is extremely knowledgeable about Observer Corps and very passionate about it, and is also an experienced trainer. So thank you, Lori. I'll turn it over to you now.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks all of you for giving me your time this afternoon. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you also come away learning a little bit more about Observer Corps. And with that, I am going to share my screen and get this show on the road. We all know this. One of the League's fundamental beliefs is an open and transparent government. And what observers do is take that fundamental belief of ours and turn it into action. It's really that simple. Let me get this. There we go. While I'm going through this today, give some thought to why you are observing now, or you want to start observing local government bodies. Just kind of put that in the back of your mind. What piqued your interest in this? And what kind of goals do you have? Some of the ones I've heard observers mention are citizen and they want to use what they've learned at meetings for better voter education. They strongly believe in transparent and effective government. One of the side benefits that I've noticed observers mention time and time again is that they become the neighborhood expert in what's going on. And they do. We become person on your block who knows what's going on in the township meetings or the school board meetings or the city council meetings or the county commissioner meetings. And that becomes very valuable because it gives us an informal way to spread the word about government. A couple of things that observers have concerns they voiced is, what if they don't want me there? Or I don't know what to do. And Grosse Pointe League developed this seminar to answer those concerns. I'm going to talk about fundamental stuff that makes observing more interesting and get to the nuts and bolts of how to do it. What's happened locally here in the Grosse Pointe and Harper Woods communities is a few observers were kind of they got a little bit of side eye, like, what are you doing here? And 2 or 3 meetings in, our observers are now welcomed, sometimes from the podium, certainly with a handshake either before or after the meeting. And they're getting comments like, we're really glad the League's here. It's so nice to see residents participating in what we do, because very, very often council and commission members are talking to an empty room. They're talking to each other, but there aren't any residents there. And it's positive feedback to our elected officials that somebody is actually interested in what they're doing. So with that, this is what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to give you some background information. I'll talk about the guidelines for observers that we've developed for statewide use. Get into the nuts and bolts of it. There is a report form. It's very simple. Some tips on how to get started. And finally, the different resources that are available to us as league members and as voters here in Michigan. And I'll take them one by one. What I'll do, as Lynn mentioned, I will stop, I'll pause at the end of each of these sections. If you have a question, please type it into the chat. Lynn's going to keep her eye on that, and I'm sure many people ask the same question. Consolidate them, and I'll answer. She'll feed those questions to me, and I'll answer them at the end of each of these sections. So, background information. I'm only going to hit the highlights of parliamentary procedure. I'll talk a little bit in depth about the Michigan Open Meetings Act because that's a central core legislation to what we do as observers. I'll also talk about the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is also very important for public meetings. I'll give you the briefest possible overview on league advocacy and why observers are important to that. So, amazingly short versions. You all know this. Parliamentary procedure, at its most basic, protects against disorderliness. That's why we use parliamentary procedure. It's that simple. If you've ever attended a meeting, whether whether it's a private meeting with a sorority or a book club or the league itself, others, American University Women, they all use some form of parliamentary procedure. The rules of order. Sometimes it's called protocol. And they govern how the work gets done. This is the shortest possible version of it. Agendas, motions, which are a formal proposal by a member that the assembly take a specific action. There are rules on discussion and debate. There are rules about tabling motions. There are also rules on debate and its limits. We're only going to hit the highlights here. Clear up a few misconceptions right away. The minutes, sometimes they're called a journal, both terms are correct, are a record of what was done, not what was said. That's an important distinction. A transcript is the verbatim written record of who said what. When we get to the Open Meetings Act, this becomes important. An agenda lists the business items and the order in which they will be discussed. Basically, all you need to know about parliamentary procedure when you get started. Minutes are what was done, not what was said. Transcripts are a verbatim written record, and an agenda lists the business items. It's pretty simple. Agendas can include, not necessarily all this stuff, they can also include more, but they can include this long list of stuff. It's up to the individual public body or the individual organization to develop what they want on their agenda. It's their call, but these items are pretty common. I want to point out this. This was a city council meeting agenda 3 years ago in the city of Grosse Pointe. I want to draw your attention to item number 4. It's what's called a consent agenda. In especially smaller governing bodies, cities, townships, counties, there'll be this on the agenda. What it is a collection of the homework council members have been given to study before the meeting. And it's generally routine or non-controversial items. But this is where the nuts and bolts, the guts of city government reside. Invoices, where they're spending the money, who they paid it to. In this one, they had to deal with a hazard mitigation plan. Sometimes ordinance adoptions, city purchases, whether it's a dumpster or a backhoe or another police car. It's all in here. The word consent does not mean that the members of the public body have agreed to these measures. It means that they have agreed that they be put on the agenda as a group. That's an important distinction. What you'll see if your public body uses this, you'll hear a motion to approve the contents of the consent agenda. Members will either agree to them, they'll second the motion and then vote on it, or someone will raise their hand and say, I want to discuss more about the invoice to Bob's sewer cleaning. That particular item in the consent agenda gets unpacked, discussed, and then it goes back for motions for approval or more discussion. Bear in mind that this is what you pay attention to. If you're watching small, local government, the good stuff happens here. This will tell you what's going on and who's doing what. The Open Meetings Act. You may remember Watergate. The Open Meetings Act was signed into law by President Gerald Ford in the aftermath of the Watergate scandal. And it was titled The Government in the Sunshine Act. And its goal was to have every public meeting and every portion of every public meeting open to public observation. 1976, so a little bit less than 50 years. There are only a few exceptions to the Federal Open Meeting Act, national security, defense issues, etc. Michigan had an Open Meetings Act prior to the federal law. Once the federal law was enacted, Michigan amended our Open Meetings Act to comply with the federal law. When I get to resources, I'll give you the exact link to how to get to the Open Meetings Handbook. Attorney General Dana Nelson just updated the Open Meetings Handbook. I recommend it highly. Those of you who want to read the law itself, the citations there, it's the 1976 Public Act 267 of the Michigan compiled laws, and there's the citation. It's also available online. The Open Meetings Handbook contains everything you need to know. I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these items. Public meetings require public notice. Whether that's posting it on, pinning a paper notice on the bulletin board at City Hall, putting it in a notice board in a public place, posting it online. The OMA doesn't distinguish between those types of things, but it has to be public. And City Hall is considered public. Most larger municipalities and many smaller ones are now putting them up online, which makes it easy for us, saves us a trip to City Hall. And they define that an open meeting must be held in a space available to the general public. What that means is you cannot hold a township board commissioners meeting in somebody's kitchen. And that's happened. It must be open to the general public, whether it's a high school gymnasium, a public library, city hall, or what have you. It can't be Joe's kitchen. And there are no exclusions or exceptions to this. They can't claim that. The OMA also defines 3 meeting types: regular, special, and closed. Regular meetings are determined by the agency or the public body. We're going to hold our meetings bi-monthly on the second Tuesday, or something to that effect. And their first meeting of their fiscal year generally is where they where and when they determine when meetings are going to be held, where they're going to be held, and what time they're going to be held. Those are regular meetings. They have to post public notice of these regular meetings within 10 days of the first meeting. And this notice, this public notice, must state the dates, the times, and the places of these regular meetings. If they make a schedule change, they have to post that change within 3 days of the meeting date. There are exceptions, but if they can't meet on the second Tuesday of the third month, they have to meet on Wednesday. They have to post that change 3 days prior. Okay? So far, so good? Special meetings are exactly that, something other than regular business, extraordinary circumstances or events. A great example, in 2021, the Detroit metro area experienced catastrophic floods, and it changed everybody's schedules. Special meetings were called in nearly every single local government here in Metro Detroit, and they got those notices up online, but they were special meetings. They weren't regular meetings. So that's what a special meeting is. It's pretty simple. Special meeting rescheduling has its own criteria. You have to post those within 18 hours. So the special meeting that our local city council held in the aftermath of the flood, they had to get that up online 18 hours prior to. Not too hard. Closed meetings have very specific defined criteria. The decision to hold a closed meeting, a meeting closed to the public, has to be made in an open meeting. If any of you have attended meetings, you've probably heard something from a council member. I move that we go into closed session. It's announced during an open meeting. They either approve it or deny it. They either leave the meeting room or they chase the public out until they're done with a closed meeting. There are only specific reasons for holding closed meetings. Personnel decisions. Only if the person being evaluated requests a closed hearing. Otherwise, they're open. If it's concerns collective bargaining, whether the strategy planning or the negotiations itself, either party can request a closed meeting. If a local city council is meeting with attorneys concerning litigation, they can request a closed meeting. But only if a public meeting would have a detrimental effect on that litigation strategy session. The other exception is reviewing employee applications. If the candidate themselves requests a closed meeting, otherwise they're open. Third item, agendas. The Open Meetings Act does not require that a public body post an agenda. Most do, but the OMA doesn't require it, nor does the OMA stipulate which items should be on the agenda. They do, however, the OMA does, however, require that minutes be kept and made public record. The other thing the OMA requires is time for public comment. The OMA doesn't specify how much time an individual gets to speak at a public meeting, but it must be open. There is a difference between attending a meeting and speaking at a meeting. They can't close the door. A public body can't close their doors to anyone who wishes to come in. They can, however, set rules for who speaks at a meeting. They can establish those rules. They can make a record of those rules. They can set time limits. They can set criteria. You must state your name and your address, etc. Speaking at a public meeting is different from attending it, and there are criteria that an organization can set for speaking. Pay attention to that. The OMA also requires minutes. The OMA does not require a transcript. They just require minutes, and those minutes must be published. At a minimum, At a minimum, the minutes must include the date, time, place of the meeting, the members who are present, the members who are absent, a record of the decisions made, and a record of any roll call votes as opposed to voice votes. The proposed minutes have to be made available to the public within 4 days of a meeting. So if the West Sunflower Township posts their proposed minutes 10 days after the meeting, they're in violation of the Open Meeting Act. Something to pay attention to. Once minutes are approved, generally at the next regularly scheduled meeting, they have to be posted within 5 days of the approval. Something to pay attention to. Those are minutes for open sessions. Minutes for closed sessions. The minutes must be approved in an open session, but they are disclosed to the public only if a Freedom of Information Act, FOI request is filed. So you want to know what happened in that litigation strategy session, you have to file an FOI request. Those are closed door sessions. And last but not least, and this has now been repealed, the Michigan legislature did amend the Open Meetings Act to, and during the public health emergency of COVID, that's since been repealed. The other additions to the OMA recently in 2020, Michigan amended our Open Meetings Act to allow two-way electronic platforms. What that translates to is a township city council can use Zoom or another electronic platform, Facebook live streaming, YouTube live streaming, whatever they choose, as a way of the public accessing the meetings. And the public notice of the meeting has to contain how to participate, a web link, the reason for the electronic meeting. The agenda has to be posted online at least 2 hours prior to an electronic meeting. feedback from observers here in Michigan, a lot of agencies use either Facebook live streaming or Zoom. Some of them use YouTube. It's very convenient for observers if you can't get to the meeting, particularly in inclement weather. But what we miss if we observe a meeting on Zoom, for example, you can't read the room. You don't get a fuller sense of what's going on. You miss body language. You miss what's going on outside of the camera's range. You may miss the give and take of other residents there at the meeting, the give and take between council members, etc. Closed captioning is often amusing, especially the spelling. It's a good alternative to not going there in person, but it is not the same, and you do miss a great deal of what's going on. So something to bear in mind when you observe. Onward to the Americans with Disability Act. The ADA isn't as old as people think it is. It was signed into law in 1990, so it's only been around 34 years. The ADA comes under civil rights law. That's important to remember. Access for those who are disabled is a civil right, and it also applies to virtual meetings. The core principle of the ADA is equal treatment and equal access to programs, services, activities, meetings, and all of that for people who are disabled. The ADA defines what disabled means. A permanent disability includes physical and mental conditions, including intellectual impairment. Permanent disabilities are defined as something that substantially limits major life activity: wheelchair bound, blind, low vision, deaf, hard of hearing, amputee, etc. It also includes autism as a permanent disability. The disabled community strongly prefers the word disabled. If you want more information on the terminology, they don't like differently abled or any other euphemisms around it. If you want more information, I highly recommend you contact Kathy McAdam, who's the state coordinator for DEI, and she can fill you in on the reasons why, but just keep that in the back of your head. The ADA also defines temporary disabilities. I break my leg and I am on crutches for 6 or 8 weeks. I am entitled to the same rights that a permanently disabled person means. What that means in real life, if I go to the Secretary of State's office to get new license tabs and I'm on crutches, I can request a chair while I'm waiting in line. The Secretary of State doesn't have to move me to the head of the line, but if I request that chair, because standing on crutches in a line that wraps around the block, they have to give it to me. It's that simple. The ADA also defines what mobility devices are: powered wheelchairs, manual wheelchairs, crutches, walkers, canes, braces, etc. I'm going to spend a few minutes on service animals. The ADA defines what a service animal is, and more importantly, what a service animal is not. The ADA defines a service animal as a dog who has been individually trained to perform work or tasks for a disabled person. That the ADA does not cover a person's emotional support peacock. A service animal is a dog by definition. Leader dogs are the most common example of that. The dog must be under the direct care of the handler, or either a leash, a harness, voice or hand controls. An organization, whether it's a public body or a private corporation, cannot impose additional fees for a service animal. For example, Cedar Point can't charge you $20 over and above the ticket price to let in your guide dog. Some possible challenges to service dogs that I've seen in public meetings. Someone will claim that the dog is unruly or threatening by its very presence. That doesn't fly under the ADA. And these cases are judged on an individual basis, and there is some discretion that's allowed to a public body about dogs. Generally, they err on the side of caution and keep the dog there. The ADA also requires communication and auxiliary aids. For example, I'm going to attend a public meeting of the West Sunflower Township. I'm hard of hearing, and I'm going to request that they provide me communication aids, such as closed captioning or an ASL, American Sign Language interpreter, or microphones on the podium so that I can hear better. If I'm blind or low vision, I can request that they provide large text, large print agendas. They have to meet those requirements on my request. The other thing that concerns us as league members directly is the ADA has specific guidelines for polling places. And a little bit later, I will tell you where to find Department of Justice's guidelines under the ADA specific to polling places, okay? Onward to advocacy. I won't spend a lot of time on this. There are 3 levels of advocacy in the league: local, state, and national. State and local advocacy positions have to conform to nationals positions. This is something that observers can make a huge difference with. There's more information at these 2 websites in the bottom of the screen. We can drop those into the chat. And what's up on Michigan League's website is a document called the Easy Reference Advocacy Chart. We put this together, updated it earlier this year. Nationals document on advocacy runs 120 odd pages, and it's the full text of every advocacy position National League has. That's a lot to ask anybody to read. So we put together a chart, and this is what the chart looks like. There are 4 columns. The first column is the category of advocacy issue. The second column, local position, is blank. Local leagues can fill in a synopsis or a couple of word description of their policies if they have one. The middle column is Michigan League's position on things. The right-hand column is nationals. If you notice that under climate change, Michigan League doesn't have one. We use nationals on science-based policies. Down below and along social policy, National has a policy that we ratify, the Equal Rights Amendment. Michigan doesn't need one. We'll use nationals. It's up on the website. Website's there. Something to have your observers review so they can be attentive at public meetings. There may be something that's happening. for advocacy positions, things that may pertain on a local level to advocacy. That Michigan League is now has advocacy positions are septic systems, because there are new laws pending. Michigan's one of the few states that does not regulate septic systems. That's of paramount importance in many suburban and most rural communities in Michigan. There's also legislation pending on community solar projects. And whether it's part of the decline to sign effort with Michigan advocacy. There's a petition drive circulating now. They want to take away state control of and regulation of community solar projects. Public libraries are under local control, and questions about public libraries, either banning books or firing librarians or defunding them, may show up in school board or library board or township board meetings. That's something that observers can pay attention to. Lots of clean energy projects are going on. Recycling, something for you to pay attention to. This will be useful to observers, so they don't have to wade through 120 pages of the minutia of league advocacy. So there's that. Pause for questions.
Lori, there's one particular question. Is there no requirement to make agendas available to the public at the meeting?
No, there's not. It's a good question. The OMA does not require agendas. They require minutes, but not agendas. Most places post the agenda, but the Open Meetings Act doesn't require it. Anything else?
Yeah, there's another one here regarding advocacy. If you're saying that if a state or local does not have a specific position, the default is the US position.
Yes.
And I think that's
Good
it for the
question.
questions
Nice.
on this part.
Smart group. The nuts and bolts of it. We're committed to transparent government. An observer, a league observer, is an impartial, because we are nonpartisan. An observer is an impartial and silent witness to a public agency's proceedings. We observe, we don't participate. We're the community's eyes and ears. We do gather information. And observers statewide and elsewhere in the country have used the information in observer reports for candidate forum questions, voter education programs, and handout material, op-ed articles to local papers, letters to the editor in local papers, formulating local advocacy positions if you want to fine-tune either a national or state position to specifically fit local conditions. You can use what you've learned in public meetings to develop an advocacy position that is specific to your area. And you can use them to develop a sense of the community, maybe what they're looking for, things that they're ignorant on, things that they want more of, and develop public programs. So you can use all of this information from the observers to develop all these things and pay it forward back into the community. There are specific guidelines on the Michigan League website, and on the Michigan League website, it's titled the LWV US Manual on Observer Corps Program, otherwise known as Observing your government in action. This is what it looks like. If you read nothing else, download this from Michigan League's website. It's one of the best handbooks on putting together and participating in an Observer Corps program. It's a great document. So those are the guidelines. Any questions on that before I move on?
Nope, there's nothing there.
Experienced group. The Observer Report. Okay, we're sitting there, we're silent, we're impartial, we're paying attention, we're eyes and ears. How do we get all this stuff recorded? Michigan's developed an Observer Report that local leagues can use. It's got 4 sections on it. It's very simple to fill out. You can download it at LWVMI's website. I'll show you how to do it in a little bit. And it looks like this. It's got 4 sections, pretty simple. The meeting information, day, date, time, the organization, who the observer is. The second section's titled Feature Evaluated. Various criteria that you may or may not see at that meeting. There's not a space for ADA compliance. If be alert to that. You may want to add that to the report. The third section is the person's presence. This could be very useful. Council members, staff members, city clerk, city attorney, the chief of police, the public works department head, parks and rec commissioner, etc. Oftentimes there are local reporters present. And a section there at the end, the issues covered in that public meeting. It's okay to not fill out every single section. NA is completely acceptable. Don't know, could not determine. All of those are acceptable. You either know or you don't know. It's very simple. You download the report here, you fill in your meeting information and give your report to your local league. It's very simple. One observer here locally mentioned a year and a half or so ago, she said, the city council meetings are a slow moving soap opera. The first 2 were boring, and then I got a sense of how they interacted with one another, what was going on. And I got a sense of the flow of the business, and all of a sudden it became very, very interesting. So be patient with yourself the first couple of meetings to get kind of used to who's on first and how they're interacting with one another. It pays off. You guys are now ready. Any other questions about the report?
There's one that came up, Lori, that said, I've seen observer reports posted on leagues' websites. Is this permitted?
I'll leave the permission part up to you, Lynn. My opinion is that if you have it in a public place on your website, you leave your local league and the league itself open to being misquoted or misattributed, and that may damage our longstanding reputation for impartiality. Yep. Something to keep in mind. I don't know what whether Michigan has a guideline on that or not.
Nope, we won't publish it.
There's another question. It says, are there guidelines for who the reports go to the board only, to members, to the league's website, to the public?
Goes to empty hole.
Well, we talked about that. They go to your local league. Your local league may or may not have a chairperson for your observer corps, or they should have somebody on the local league board or a committee member that gathers these reports. They are not public documents. They are internal league documents. We may use the information to develop public programs, but as I answered the prior question, if you make the raw data on these reports public, you are opening the league to misattribution, misquoting, and all the other stuff that goes with misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. They're internal league documents. You can develop public stuff from them, but I would keep them within the league.
I know that some local leagues publish synopses from observers in their newsletters. It's more rather than a verbatim kind of he said, she said, it's just more of what was observed. Another question came forward. If a person who often observes wishes to speak on their own behalf during public comments, may they, and how would you introduce yourself?
We tossed this question around the last couple of years in the quarterly meetings, and the consensus of the group then was, as an observer, you are a silent and impartial witness, and therefore you don't have, you shouldn't speak out while you are observing a meeting. I certainly, personal opinion, I certainly would not do that wearing a League of Women Voters name tag or polo shirt or something, because the league speaks with one voice. As league members, we are certainly entitled to our personal opinions and preferences. We don't always agree with league advocacy positions, but we do so as private citizens and not as league members. The league does speak with one voice. If you have a comment, if I had a comment or a personal opinion on a specific item that I observed happen at my city council meeting, I would do one of two things. If I had league identifying, like a name tag or like a polo shirt or a sweatshirt or something, I'd approach a council member when I was quote unquote off duty and introduce myself just as Lori Kingsbury, who lives on Lake Point Street, as opposed to League of Women Voters Observer Kingsbury, and make it very clear to the council member I was speaking with that I am speaking as a constituent and not a league member. But you have to be comfortable with being able to draw that distinction. If you're not comfortable doing that in person, face to face, consider writing them a letter or sending them an email as a constituent as opposed to a league member. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, we had another question. Should the local league observer corps keep track of observation reports from Board of Canvasser sessions?
Oh, good question. We have a completely, I think Sue Smith, is it Sue Smith? Who's coordinating the Board of Canvassers statewide?
I think it might be
It's
Paula.
well,
Is
it's
it-
Sarah.
Sarah.
Yes.
Sarah Work.
Yeah.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah.
That's a whole separate group of observations, because that is something specific to elections. Observer corps stuff that we're talking about today is city councils, county commissions, water districts, school boards, public library boards, etc. not including the Board of Canvassers? Excellent question. Others?
Lori, are we at the end of your presentation so I can stop the screen share, or do you have some more?
Not quite. Let's do this.
Okay,
This is how you get started. It's pretty straightforward. Contact your local league president, let them know you attended this, find out what agencies need observers, find out the meeting dates and locations, abide by the Observer Corps guidelines, and get all the background information at Michigan's website. And this is what it looks like. It's very simple. If you go to LWVMI.org, click on the members tab. That's step number 2. Step number 3, select operations. Step number 4, choose Observer Corps. And when you choose Observer Corps, a list of handouts, all of which are the background information to all of my talk today, are there on the website. LWVMI.org, members tab, operations, Observer Corps, download. They're all there. There's more stuff too. Wait, I heard a wait. Okay, there's more. If you are interested in the details of Nationals advocacy positions, the document is titled Impact on Issues. On our LWVMI site, it's called the LWVUS Manual on Organizing. No, scratch that. Impact on Issues is at lwv.org. That's the 120 odd full document on all of our advocacy positions. You can download the PDF from Nationals website, or you can buy the booklet. I think it used to be $5. You can get it on Amazon. Or you can download the PDF for free. Don't neglect the different departments within a local government: sanitation, public health, parks and recreation, public safety, police, fire, health, etc. They've got lots and lots of stuff available. If you had to choose one, I would choose the next one. Your city charters and ordinances are what govern what goes on locally, and they are sometimes not easy to find. This is one-stop shopping for city and county ordinance codes and charters. There's the websites there. You select the state. 82 of Michigan's 83 counties have their documents, city charters, and ordinances posted here. Click on Michigan. This will take you directly to Michigan. It's alphabetical by city. You click on the link provided and it takes you directly to the city charter and the city code or the county charter. It's one-stop shopping. It saves lots of time and aggravation. The state of Michigan also has publications. Almost all of them are free. I can drop the website address into the chat that describe state government, the state legislature, the executive branch, the various departments, what they do, etc. This document for the people, by the people, is available as a PDF. I'll put it in the chat. It has a genuinely useful section toward the back that defines the different types of local government in Michigan, whether it's a charter township or something different. The U.S. Department of Justice also, again, they're free publications on the ADA and other things. It's doj.gov. And please use your local library. The reference librarian, whether it's a township with only 1,000 people or a major metropolitan area with millions, the reference librarian is a solid gold resource to us. They love being asked questions and they will help you find anything. If you're looking for past meeting minutes or past meeting consent items, libraries generally have them. It's a wonderful resource and they're free. And there's all of us. If you have other questions, Lynn is always available. I'm always available. I'd be more than glad to listen to your question, answer it to the best of my ability. And if I can't answer it, I'll find out where you can get it answered. And that's it. Thanks. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Lori. There's a couple other questions that have come up, and then I'm gonna go ahead and
Stop screen. There
the
we go.
share.
You guys.
There everybody are. Let's see. So, couple things. One question, have you ever been approached by a council member or person who knows you are in the league about your opinion on an issue you observed at a meeting? If yes, what do you say?
Yes, I have been approached, and what I have said, I have referred them to our local president. It's that simple. The same thing goes for reporters. Reporters are great for this. What do you think? I know you're a league member. I got approached at a press conference a couple of months ago by a local reporter. What's the league think of this? I said, well, why don't you contact our local league president? I think she'll have more information for you than I can, and leave it at that. It's that simple. Because the league speaks with one voice, and our spokesperson locally is your local league president, not our members. Or refer them to the state league if it's a state question, but refer them to the league president. Other stuff.
Okay, I think that's the last of the questions, but if there are any further questions people have, if you want to raise your hand, we can call on you. Most people are muted, so you'll need to unmute if you do have a question. And I can't see all 45 people, so if you could raise the button hand, that would be great. That'll bring you to the top of the screen.
I just dropped in the chat the direct link to all the free publications that the Michigan legislature puts out. They're very useful and they're free. Can't go wrong.
I'll also send these links out when I send the recording so that you have all of those in one place. And I know it's kind of hard sometimes to get things off of a chat. Here's another question came up. What type of file sharing do other leagues use to keep copies of reports, etc.?
Ooh, good question.
That might be a good topic for our next meeting, actually.
Actually, that's an excellent topic. There
Yeah.
are a lot of things out there. You could convert them to PDFs and put them up on Google Drive if your league uses Gmail, uses Google. There are a lot of options. That actually might be a great discussion.
Yeah, I think we'll probably put that off for our discussion when we have a lot of examples to show. Anything else anyone has before we call it quits? I really appreciate everybody attending today. Hopefully you got a refresher if you're an experienced observer, and if you're brand new, this gives you a lot of background information. Myself and Lori and your league president or Observer Corps director will be there to answer any further questions as you get started. And other than that, I'm gonna call it quits for today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate it.